Have you ever talked to your dog and watched him slowly tilt his head to one side? We've always thought that was just the cutest thing, haven't we? Maybe you just said his name, or asked if he wants to go for a walk, or maybe you made a weird sound just to see what would happen. And then it happens, that slow, sideways tilt of the head, one ear up, eyes wide, looking at you like you just said the most fascinating thing anyone has ever said in the history of the universe. And your heart melts completely. You've always assumed it just meant he was curious, or that he was trying to understand you. Maybe that he thought you were a little strange, honestly. And you weren't wrong, but you also weren't seeing the full picture. Because what's actually happening inside your dog's brain in that moment is far more layered, more intelligent, and more deeply connected to you than most people realize. And there's one thing that dogs do with this behavior, one specific thing, that science only recently began to understand, and it will completely change how you see that little tilt forever. 1. The head tilt is not just adorable, it is, in the most literal sense, your dog trying to hear you better. And the mechanics behind it are genuinely fascinating. Dogs have mobile outer ears, called pinnae, and the way sound enters those ears depends heavily on the angle of the head. When your dog tilts his head, he's physically repositioning his ear canals to better capture the specific frequencies in your voice. Research published in Animal Cognition has shown that dogs are remarkably sensitive to tonal variation in human speech. They don't just hear words, they process pitch, rhythm, and emotional charge as distinct channels of information. But here's the thing, different breeds tilt more than others, and it has nothing to do with intelligence. Dogs with floppy ears, like Basset Hounds or Cocker Spaniels, tilt more often because their ears partially block the ear canal, making the adjustment more necessary. Dogs with upright ears, like Huskies or German Shepherds, do it less. Their anatomy already gives them a wider acoustic range. So when your dog tilts his head at you, he isn't just being cute. He is literally fine-tuning his hearing like a satellite dish trying to lock onto a signal. And that's only the beginning of what's happening. 2. There is a visual component to the head tilt that almost nobody talks about, and it's connected to something deeply specific about dog anatomy. A 2013 study by researcher Stanley Coren, a psychologist and dog behavior expert at the University of British Columbia, proposed something that sounds almost too simple, but the data backed it up. Dogs with longer muzzles, like Labrador Retrievers or Greyhounds, tilt their heads more frequently when looking at human faces. The reason? Their own snout gets in the way. When a dog with a longer nose tries to make full eye contact with a human, the muzzle blocks the lower portion of the face, including the mouth, which is one of the primary areas humans use to express emotion. So the tilt is also a visual compensation. By angling the head, the dog shifts the muzzle out of the line of sight and gets a clearer read on your facial expression. You've probably noticed your dog watching your face intently when you're speaking. He isn't staring blankly. He's reading you. And when he tilts, he's getting a better angle on the information he needs. The head tilt is, in part, your dog trying to see your emotions more clearly. 3. Dogs don't just tilt their heads at any sound, they tilt them most often at specific sounds that carry meaning, and science has mapped exactly which ones. A landmark study published in Current Biology in 2022 found that dogs learn the names of objects through repetition and association, similar to how human infants do. In that study, the dogs who showed the highest rates of head tilting were also the ones who had learned the largest number of object names, meaning the tilt was directly correlated with active cognitive processing of language. This isn't a coincidence. The head tilt appears to be a sign of mental effort, of the dog working to match an incoming sound to something stored in memory. Think about the words that make your dog tilt the most. Walk, treat, bath, vet, your dog's name. These aren't random. They're the words with the highest emotional and experimental weight in his vocabulary. His brain is doing something deliberate, it's searching. It's cross-referencing. The tilt is the outward sign of an internal process, not just a reflex. And if that already makes you see your dog differently, stay with us. Subscribe if you haven't yet. This is exactly what this channel exists to do. 4. Here's something most dog owners never consider: the head tilt is also, at its core, a social behavior, and dogs have learned to use it strategically around humans. A study from the University of Portsmouth found that dogs produce more complex facial expressions when a human is looking at them compared to when they aren't. Dogs are acutely aware of when they have an audience, and they modulate their expressions accordingly. The head tilt fits directly into this framework. Over thousands of years of co-evolution with humans, dogs have become extraordinarily skilled at reading what makes us respond positively to them. And few things trigger a warmer human reaction than the head tilt. We smile, we praise, we touch, we reach for treats. Dogs are not consciously performing in a manipulative sense, but they do reinforce behaviors that generate positive feedback. What this means is that your dog has learned, on some level, that tilting his head when you talk results in good things from you. So he does it more. The behavior started as a functional acoustic and visual adjustment, and it became, over time, part of the emotional language between dogs and humans. Which raises the question of what that emotional language actually looks like in the brain. 5. The head tilt activates a specific neural pathway in dogs that researchers have only recently begun to map with any precision. Using fMRI technology on awake, trained dogs, a methodology pioneered by neuroscientist Gregory Burns at Emory University, researchers have been able to observe which regions of the canine brain activate in response to human voices and emotionally charged words. What they found is that dogs process the emotional tone of human speech in the right hemisphere of the brain, while the meaning of words is processed in the left, a division strikingly similar to how human brains handle language. When a dog is working hard to process speech, both hemispheres engage simultaneously. The head tilt, particularly to one side, may reflect which hemisphere is doing more work at a given moment. Dogs tend to tilt left when processing emotionally charged sounds, because the right hemisphere, which governs emotional processing, receives input primarily from the left ear. You can actually test this at home. Say your dog's name in a flat, neutral tone. Then say it with warmth and excitement. Watch which direction he tilts. You may notice a pattern. His brain is telling you something every time the head moves. 6. Puppies tilt their heads before they understand a single word of human language, and that tells us something important about where this behavior actually comes from. From the earliest weeks of life, before any training or conditioning has taken place, young dogs tilt their heads at novel sounds. This points to an innate neurological response, not a learned one. Developmental researchers studying canine cognition believe the tilt is rooted in the same attentional system that governs how dogs orient towards stimuli that require focus and interpretation. It's the physical expression of a brain shifting into active listening mode. What's remarkable is that wolves, the closest wild relatives of domestic dogs, show the same behavior at a much lower frequency. The domestication process, which began roughly 15,000 years ago, appears to have amplified this response in dogs, likely because individuals who were more attentive and responsive to human communication were more successfully integrated into human groups and therefore more likely to survive and reproduce. The head tilt you see today is, in a real sense, a product of 15,000 years of dogs and humans shaping each other. And that brings us to the thing that science discovered, the piece of this that nobody talks about, and that will change how you feel the next time your dog looks up at you. Here is what researchers found when they studied dogs with the highest rates of head tilting over time. Those dogs scored significantly higher on tests of social bonding, emotional attunement, and responsiveness to human cues. Not just intelligence. Not just hearing or vision. Emotional attunement. The dogs who tilt most are the dogs most deeply invested in understanding the humans they love. The head tilt is not just a sensory adjustment or a cute reflex, it is one of the most visible signs that your dog is emotionally present with you, that he is trying, actively and deliberately, to understand not just what you're saying but what you mean, what you feel, and what you need from him. Every time your dog tilts his head at you, he is choosing to pay attention. He is choosing you. In a world full of noise and distraction, he hears your voice and decides it is worth the effort to understand. That little movement, a few centimeters of head rotation, is 15,000 years of evolution saying, "You matter to me." If this shifted something in how you see your dog, please like and subscribe to the channel if you're not already part of this community. It really helps this channel reach more people who love their dogs as much as you do. And hit the notification bell so you never miss what we put out next. We cover dog behavior and cognition in the way it deserves, with real science and real heart. And before you go, I want to ask you something specific. Does your dog tilt more to one side than the other? Left or right? Leave it in the comments. We're collecting this anecdotally and the pattern is genuinely interesting. I'll see you in the next one.